Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning into this session. I'm Anne-Marie Keane. I'm the FET Manager with responsibility for quality assurance in Laois and Offaly ETB. LOETB was the second ETB to go through the inaugural review process, which took place in April 2021, and I was the review coordinator. This short session will provide an outline of LOETB's experience. I will briefly explain the background to the QQI inaugural review of ETBs. I will then describe how LOETB prepared for the inaugural review process while also dealing with COVID-19 restrictions, lockdowns, etc. Next, I will provide you with some insight into what the week of the review looked like and what was involved. And finally, I will outline what the next steps are for LOETB in implementing the findings of the review. So as I said, LOETB was the second ETB to have a week-long panel event. As you can see, almost all Phase 1 ETBs have had their review visit at this stage, and Phase 2 and 3 ETBs are all scheduled for the next academic year. For any of you working in ETBs that are in Phase 2 or Phase 3, you may have already heard about the process, or may have even participated in some form of consultation that will feed into your ETB's self-evaluation report. So just to provide some background as to the reason that ETBs are going through this process at the moment. Following the establishment of QQI in 2012 and of ETBs in 2013, there was a requirement for each ETB to re-engage with QQI as individual providers. This re-engagement required each ETB to conduct an evaluation of their own management and governance processes and produce an executive self-evaluation report and a subsequent quality improvement plan. Each year since, ETBs have reported on the progress made on the QIPs and identified specific continuous improvement actions. The Qualifications and Quality Assurance Act 2012 places an obligation on QQI to establish procedures for the review by QQI of the effectiveness and implementation of a provider's quality assurance procedures. Equally, the Act also places an obligation on each provider to engage in the external review by QQI of their quality assurance procedures. QQI and the ETB sector have spent a significant amount of time planning the inaugural review process, and in 2019 a plan was set out for how the process would be rolled out. And the first phase of reviews, which LOETB was included in, was scheduled to take place from September to December 2020. The onset of the COVID-19 pandemic caused a delay which necessitated a change of the dates initially planned. So in LOETB, we published our self-evaluation report in early 2021, and we had our review visit, which was conducted online in April 2021. In the schedule agreed between ETBs and QQI, there are specific milestones and targets. The first stage was for each ETB to provide a provider profile. This profile gives an opportunity for the ETB to provide the panel members with general information about the ETB and to provide some relevant quantitative data about numbers and profiles of learners, the ETB's provision, certification levels, staffing numbers, etc. QQI then inform ETBs of the composition of the specific panel. The panel had 6 independent members with varying backgrounds, including panel members with significant vocational or further education and training experience, representation from industry, a current or past FET learner from a different ETB, and panel members with QA experience. We then had to produce a self-evaluation report, which was the main point of reference for the review panel. I'll address the contents of this self-evaluation report in a later slide. About 6 weeks before the review visit, a planning meeting took place which gave us an opportunity to meet the chairperson and coordinating reviewer of the panel to meet and to discuss the logistics of the week of the review. This slide and the next slide sets out the objectives and related criteria that ETBs are required to address in the self-evaluation report. In planning our consultation process for conducting the self-evaluation process, we considered which of the criterion were most relevant to each category of stakeholders. For example, which criteria was most relevant to learners or to local employers or to staff. There were some criterion that were relevant to all stakeholders and perhaps others that didn't affect employers as much as they would affect, say, learners or staff. In considering each of the criterion, we decided through our consultation process to get a sense of what we and our stakeholders consider that we are doing well and what needs improvement. There were some areas that were clearly at early stages of development, such as some of our governance groups, and we acknowledged this in our report. The objectives and criterion provided us with a focus on a range of areas, which was really useful, as otherwise we would have concentrated too much on one area and neglected other areas. So just to give you an idea of the consultation that took place within LOETB with staff and learners in advance of producing this self-evaluation report. The pandemic had a huge effect on what we had planned in terms of consultation. While the consultation events that happened in March 2020 were in person, everything else happened online. While it worked very well, we would have preferred to meet people face to face and to have had interactive focus groups, etc. But we did the best that we could, while our focus was on ensuring continuity of our FET service during what was a very difficult and stressful time for both learners and staff. We circulated a range of learner surveys at different stages, and AINTIS were really helpful in providing an online forum event specifically for our learners to participate in. In terms of staff feedback, we consulted with the FET forum, which is made up of all of our centre and service managers from across the FET service. We consulted with the QA support staff, and then we circulated a range of surveys for teaching staff. We were very conscious of not overburdening staff. Given the restrictions that were in place during those times, we were very conscious of not taking them out of class, etc. So online surveys was the best that we could do. That said, the feedback that we received from teaching staff was invaluable and was very much taken into account in the self-evaluation report. A lot of the identified actions listed in the self-evaluation report were based on feedback provided by staff, and our staff were happy to see that their voices were heard, despite the somewhat limited means of consultation that took place. This slide and the next slide gives an outline of the sessions that took place over the course of the review week. In total, there were 33 different sessions and over 160 people participated throughout the week-long panel review. Every participant took part in the process voluntarily. Prior to the sessions, I organised a briefing session with each group to ensure that everyone understood the purpose of the review, who the panel members were, etc. This helped to reassure the participants that the sessions were by no means intended to be intimidating or testing. It was a really busy week where the panel met a huge amount of people with different experiences and perspectives. The focus of the first day was mainly on our learners and on the supports that were available to the learners in the ETB. Learners that I spoke to after the sessions were delighted to have taken part and were happy that the panel were genuinely interested in hearing about their experiences. On day 2, the first half of the day focused on employers and our employer engagement team and how employers helped to shape our provision. The other half of day 2 focused on teaching staff, with a range of sessions for different cohorts of teaching staff. The teachers found it really enjoyable and a very positive experience. The first half of day 3 focused on centre managers and those with programme coordination roles in relation to access, transfer and progression. The remainder of the day was made up of sessions with our external stakeholders, including second providers, higher ed partners, community groups and some external authenticators that have worked with LOETB in the past. Again, it was a really positive day with staff and external stakeholders reporting very positive experiences with the panel members who seemed genuinely interested in getting a sense of how we work. Day 4 focused more on governance and management of quality with sessions with the QA team, the steering group that was formed for the purposes of the self-evaluation, and members of our Quality Council and the ETB board. Again, the day went really well, with all participants saying that they would have liked to have the sessions last longer than the prescribed 45 minutes. This was a common comment that I heard from participants throughout the week. 45 minutes flew by when everyone settled into the conversation. The final day of the week was a shorter day which provided us with an opportunity to give feedback to QQI on the entire process, and then the chairperson of the panel provided us with preliminary feedback, and we concluded at around lunchtime on the Friday. We are so delighted to be at the stage where our review has finished, and we look forward to receiving the draft report from the panel in September 2021. Once we receive the draft report, we must then provide a formal response to the report and set out an action plan for implementing the recommendations that the panel make. The panel chair, in his feedback on the final day of the review, did make reference to some topics which may appear as recommendations in the report. So we intend in the meantime to consider those areas so that we can plan for implementation. After a year, we are required to provide a progression report which sets out what progress we have made on implementing the actions in the report. So it will be important for us to ensure that we have a plan with agreed timelines to ensure that the recommendations are not overlooked. It's our intention to keep the self-evaluation steering group in place to oversee the implementation of the recommendations, which will help us to stay focused. So just to conclude, overall this experience, while it was a very busy time, was such a positive and rewarding experience for everyone involved. It really was great to hear the panel feedback at the end of the week, where the chair had just as many commendations for us as he had recommendations. We look forward to sharing the official report with our staff, learners and other stakeholders when we receive it. I cannot overstate the importance of staff and learner input and feedback into the entire process. From the consultation period, where the surveys provided us with a clear indication of areas where we needed to improve, to the actual panel event where the panel members could hear directly from the learners and staff about their actual experiences. This really was the most important part, and I have no doubt will be the areas of focus in the panel report, as well as having featured strongly in our self-evaluation report. So for any staff members and ETBs that haven't gone through the process yet, please make sure that if you're given an opportunity to provide feedback, whether that's through a survey, focus group or during an actual panel sessions, do it. All of the staff members that participated in our sessions really enjoyed the experience. And one thing to remember is to be honest in the feedback that you provide. The panel will have spoken to so many people over the course of the week and will have read the self-evaluation report from cover to cover, so they will notice inconsistencies. It's only by being honest about our experiences that we can take action to make improvements. Thanks very much for sticking with me throughout this session. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions or need clarification on any of the points that I have made. And best of luck to all of the other ETBs that are about to embark on this process.